Namaste. We are with Gautam ji once again for our next podcast. Gautam, thank you so much for your time.
Most welcome, Nick. Good evening to you and everyone listening to this podcast.
It's been a few weeks. We've had a bit of a break from the last episode. So it's nice to catch up with you once again.
Yes, that's right.
Gautam, I wanted to discuss with you the traits of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt if a devotee becomes aware of this, they can start spotting the ego and its functions right in its root.
Yes, it's a very good topic actually.
Made a few points which I have, and I felt like if we can discuss that.
Yes, but before that, Nick, it is an excellent topic to look at the ego, because let's not forget that Baba's whole teaching, you see, if his whole teaching is surrender to me, surrender to Baba, that means the dropping away of the individual ego and its identifications. So, a devotee needs to understand that you cannot surrender to Baba and yourself still have an extremely strong identification with the ego, because both cannot happen together. Submitting to Baba's will means giving up my will, because Baba knows best. So before we start, I want to make this clear that, to have any quality in excess, like pride or arrogance, for example, or any negative quality, hatred and malice, it does not work, because then the surrender has not happened. The ego is still strongly identified. Now, depending on what you ask me, we can explore this in various ways.
You raised such an important point, and it reminded me of what Kabirji's Doha is. In one line, he summed it up very beautifully. Jab main tha tab hari nahi, and jab hari hai main nahi.
Exactly.
So literally the ego and God cannot coexist.
Yes, but today what's happening is we are trying to make both coexist.
So Gautam, the first thing, and I feel this is also very linked to a bit of my work in one way, because many people ask me in emails that how do you identify these wonderful devotees that are featured on the channel? And in a way, this is also like the checklist I have, so I felt it'll be a nice discussion with you. The first thing I always look for is that feeling of someone feeling special, either in a positive or in a negative way. Like the ego loves that feeling special.
Yes, that is true. And so I presume what you're saying is that you would be wary of someone who claims that they are special or they feel special above others. You would be wary of bringing them onto your channel. You see? Because again, it is the ego which feels special. Look at me. This is who I am. I am the special one. I am different from others. I am the chosen one, you see. And that is why my teacher Rameshji would say, true humility is never recognized by the one who has it. Means if someone says, I am humble, it means he's not. You see, because you're trying to proclaim I am humble. Humble and being humble comes out in your actions, in your words. So the minute you catch someone saying I am humble, that's not true. Because again, the ego is wanting others' approval, and therefore it says I am humble. So anyone who says I am special, look at me. Look at me is what is inferred, because when you say I am special means look at me. That is the ego with its identification. In this case, it is a spiritual identification.
Yes.
What do we do? Normal people will buy a nice car, a fancy car, and then the look at me as this is my car. You see? But the spiritual ego will say, look at me. I am blessed with certain experiences. I, for some reason, by divine command, am the chosen one. So one has to be very careful of that. And from what I have seen, the personalities on your channel, there are so many I can see. I, of course, is the prime example where There's no air of this specialness. In fact, it's very matter of fact. That is really something to look out for.
And Gautam, the other side of the coin, where one other tendency I've seen, maybe not with devotees that are featured, but just generally, that one can have a negative impression of themselves, and even that is the ego at play.
Yes, true.
Like someone who's extremely introverted and they have like a bad self image and it becomes self destructive, that also is the ego.
Yes, like for example, let's say you feel nobody looks at you. That is the inverted ego, because now you've built an identity about this fact that nobody looks at you. That is also an identification.
Correct. The poor me.
Yes, the poor me, nobody loves me, nobody looks at me, nobody appreciates me. It's the same thing, because we are in the land of duality. Life is duality, and these two are the polaric aspects. So either way it is, look at me. One is outside, look at me, I'm this personality, and one is exactly the same but within. So it's the same ego, and that is why I'm particularly fond of the Buddha's teaching, because he always said walk the middle way. See, the beauty of the middle way is this: you reach stillness very easily. Now with these polaric opposites, like a pendulum, when the pendulum swings to one side, it is already gathering momentum to swing to the other. And that is for most of us the dance in our life between pleasure and pain, ups and downs. We are going like pendulums non-stop. So the middle way is be aware, witness the ego, witness the antics of the ego, see what positions the ego takes, whether as the poor me or the great me. Both are positions. And be wary, be alert, be attentive, because the peace is to be found in stillness, not in taking positions.
And Gautam, in the Baba path, one thing that happens often is experiences. And if you could shed some light on, see, it's one thing having an experience, maybe writing it down in your diary. But then when there's an over eagerness to share it, or again that feeling of specialness creeps in, and I have had this experience, that again is specific to the Baba path, quite a tricky one.
Yes, it is. You see, now there are two things here, Nick. One is, say one has the experience or an experience. In one's innocence, one is eager to share it. That is one aspect. Two is your sharing again based on look at me, I am special, or is your sharing one where you are sharing with others so they can benefit some way from your experience? This is very important, and only the one who knows the experience will know what is the intention behind sharing the experience. You see? Now, I will give you one example. My mother, when she went through a spiritual awakening, she was seeing visions of the energy movements and all, which she drew in illustration form. She was not an artist. Her drawings were very raw, but what she saw, she drew. Now the point was, should these be shared with people?
Yes.
And when she was asked by people who had seen her drawings and who were familiar with the subject, she said, my only reason to share would be if others are going through a similar process, they now have a roadmap. They should not feel that they are losing their mind, or what is this movement of energy in the body and all that. That was the intent. The intent was not, oh, I'm so special, I've had this, now I want to tell everyone about my drawings. So the person who is having these experiences needs to see, what is my intent behind sharing it? Do I want to become famous? Do I want people to acknowledge me, look at me? Or is a genuine feeling of sharing with my brothers and sisters so that they may benefit from my experience?
It's a very fine line, because sometimes one may not even be aware of it, but it's a very fine line, and this is something like in my own experience, there are sometimes, people who'll either walk up to me or send an email, and then there's almost a keenness on wanting to be featured, and it almost then backfires where those are the cases you'll be like, hey, let's keep, a few feet away and not entertain, because like people literally, devotees like I and some of the ones we featured, we need to plead them and really
Correct.
ask them to give time. It's they are not by any means interested in fact, if at all, it puts them in a spot of bother because they like their solitude and nobody knowing about them, and all of a sudden you'll have people coming, oh, we want to ask this and that. So it's not really, I mean, they don't really want the limelight by any means. If at all, it's the opposite.
And in fact, there's one more factor here, that see, if I'm a devotee and I trust that whatever happens and will happen is God's will, is Baba's will, then I don't need to do anything. The universe will come to me and ask me about my experiences. You see? And then I'm ready to share because they are there, the experiences are there. Or the other way around is, supposing I have these experiences to share, if it happens effortlessly and smoothly, without me having to market myself, without me having to ring doorbells and knock on people's doors and say, hey, please look at me, I have these experiences, then it is meant to be. You see, so whatever happens naturally with the least amount of doership involved is what is meant to happen. So once again, I would add here that the person with the experience can see for themselves with some degree of awareness. Like you said, if the awareness is not there and it's unconscious, nothing can be done.
Yes.
But if there's a degree of awareness, they will be able to see where they themselves are coming from in the sharing of the experiences. You see, because if the intent, as an example, is that I want to be treated as a special devotee of Sai Baba's and people should come and touch my feet, that is the ego talking, you see. In fact, it reminds me something very funny when Siddharameshwar Maharaj, who was Nisargadatta Maharaj's guru, when people started touching his feet, someone next to him said, how do you feel someone is now touching your feet? And he replied, don't ask me, ask my feet. He said, I don't know, I don't care. You see, so that is the whole point.
And actually, Gautam, if we think of it, the Leelas and the experiences are actually of Baba's. It could happen to anybody. The person, whoever it's happening to, is basically almost irrelevant. It's the Leela actually of Baba.
Yes.
So when it's shared from that perspective, where Baba is the spotlight, the main subject, not the person. I mean, like say when we read the Charitra, if you interchange 2 or 3 names, but it's basically Baba's compassion being shared.
Correct.
It is Baba's love for his devotees, his teachings, him basically holding the devotee's hand.
Yes.
The instrument is almost irrelevant there.
Yeah, that is very well said. So you will also know with the one sharing the experience where the spotlight is. Is it on Baba or is it on that person?
Correct.
That's a very good point you raised.
And Gautam, another aspect on the ego, coming back to that, is a disproportionate sense of reactivity to an event sometimes. It might just get triggered by something which like doesn't even need or warrant some sort of a reaction.
Well, see, that again is back to the ego, because if I'm strongly identified with a position, that this is me, this is my belief, this is what I believe in, how dare you challenge my belief? And I react and explode. That shows my problem. My identification is so strong that if someone says something, I get upset. But if I accept that everyone has their own point of view, I will agree with some, I won't agree with some. But their point of view is as valid as mine. That is the middle way. So this is another good pointer. Do you really get upset and triggered all the time by people? If so, it is nothing to do with that person, because after all, you are the one feeling the upset, not the person.
Yes.
So you have to look at it. What are these reactions? It is because I'm identified with a position or belief. Someone said something to me I didn't like. That's the problem, you see. The me with its sense of doership. So either I blame the other for doing something which I don't like, or I blame this whole act of something happening on the other and me being at the receiving end with my identification. So he did this to me. You see, this point gets missed in the early days of one's spiritual journey. What is missed is that the center of attention is the me. So any reaction, I'm laboring this point again, any reaction which arises is our issue to deal with, not the other person. So the listeners of this podcast need to see what triggers them, what makes them react, and they have to then ask why they react that way, what is behind that, and that becomes a beautiful exploration of the spiritual dimension. That is what a sincere seeker, a sincere devotee starts doing on the path. So it's actually a gift, I tell people who attend my talks that if you are getting triggered, rather than fighting it or getting triggered unconsciously, be thankful, because you are now given an opportunity to look at these things which are triggering you and question them, rather than suffering on and on and on and constantly getting triggered. This allows you to now explore this dimension.
Gautam, can you give a few questions, like almost becomes like a self-inquiry? So some pointers there, like maybe a few questions people could ask themselves with regard to being able to see like these reactions that come up. Something they can do as an exercise.
You see, just like the example we used, if they take, let's say, any moment of the day, let's say the first half of the day, the full day, and see what upsets them, that can become a sadhana. Why was I upset? And who was upset? The me with which identification was upset? It will be a most beautiful spiritual practice, because you will see in each and every instance that you have circled back to the me and my story, and this is me, and there is something which has happened that I don't like, and therefore I am upset. So what happens is, earlier the dialogue is something happens to me.
Yes.
Something has been said to me. See how we pull back to the me? But with spiritual understanding, it starts shifting to something happened, full stop. Not something happened to me. Something was said, full stop. Not something was said to me. So when that starts happening, the me gets freed up from this crust and all this toxic material which has got built around it. And then pure functioning, pure witnessing starts happening, and it makes life much simpler.
And Gautam, honor, this is a very important point, and Gautam, one on the last ending note, one aspect I feel in bhakti which is important to have a relationship with your Isht, in this case with Baba, that is welcome and it is very important. But at the same time, it's pretty similar to what we said in the beginning of feeling special. This is something I've seen in common in many cases where devotees will say, I am Baba's special child, or now it is a tricky one. Like, it is fine to have a relationship with Baba saying I am Baba's child, but then to add Baba's name before yours, or things like that, like any sort of, I've literally had people sometimes tell me, I am Baba's most special devotee, and I'll just turn a blind eye. But in terms of, this is a tricky one, like this having a relationship, but then again not personalizing it and feeling you are the center of it, because it can swing both ways. When things are great, I've seen, then they are ultra happy. Then it can also swing the other way. When something doesn't work out, then, oh, Baba let me down.
Yes, and you see, because this may be their truth, Nick. Supposing, for example, they know what ground they are saying they have a special relationship. We don't know. So let's say it is their truth. Now they make an identity out of it, that I am Baba's special one. Now you also mentioned about taking Baba's name. I presume you mean like, putting the Sai prefix before one's name. Now this is an interesting point to explore. See, sometimes people change their names or take on a new name. The reason is this: the old ego has shattered and a new person is born, so to speak. Like even Nisargadatta Maharaj, his earlier name was Maruti Kambli. And then he took on the name Nisargadatta when the transformation happened. Now, that's the turning point. Now, what happens if there's no transformation and I just put a prefix because I'm a disciple of anyone? In this case, it's Sai Baba, but many masters change the names of their devotees also.
Correct.
The whole idea is so that your associations and identifications with your old name fall away. But the risk here is that I have built a new identification without the old identifications falling away. So I have all the old identifications connected to my name and my beliefs and my judgments and my concepts, and now I have one more added on as my identification with a divine personage. So sometimes people don't understand this, you see, because you go and put the prefix or whatever, but one must understand it is not a small thing, it is a big thing, because now you have to live up to that prefix. And are you living up to that? Is the transformation happening? Is all this being witnessed, is being seen? So it has to be a very careful decision. And if the motivation is right, if the intention is right, then by all means one can take a decision that now I feel I am a new person or I am on the way and this will help me in my practice. By all means, go ahead. If you feel that's for you, why not? But please look at it as not just another identification.
Gautam, it's a tricky one because once I was sitting with Ai, and she is a shining example of humility. So one day I was just sitting with her and we were talking about something, and she said she doesn't consider herself as a devotee of Baba. She said, I'm the dust of his feet. Literally, she said the word that we are begging him. So we are beggars in front of him. We cannot consider ourselves devotees unless he says you are my devotee. Now someone so close to him, someone so devoted to him says this. And then on the other hand, you have people who claim they are like the greatest devotees of Baba and the special ones. So you see, the contrast is so apparent.
Right.
But I just feel it's always safer if you, again, humility one cannot instill. But the chances of you going wrong in Ai's boat are much lesser. They say the bigger you are, the harder they fall, right?
Yes.
But I found Ai's that sentence, so humbling. And where there's no position of specialness at all. It is like if he gives something, it is his will, it is his greatness. I am merely a beggar in front of him. This was her words.
Yes.
And I said, this is a true devotee to me, there is no sense of entitlement at all. That I felt was an important thing.
Yeah, and that is why I'm so glad that you have these beautiful people you have exposed to all of us, and these videos will be there, for eternity, hopefully. It's a great service that has happened.
It's all his play unfolding.
Yes, I'm sure. But what I was saying was, whoever has come on your channel is his will, and whoever has not, it's his will.
His will, absolutely.
Who will come in the future is his will. It's all his will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would be very happy, Nick, to explore the topic of the ego in subsequent podcasts also.
Yes.
If your audience feels this is of benefit to them, then you see, because this is what impacts our daily living.
Yes.
The quality of our lives. So it's nice to go into these serious explorations So if your audience is open to it, I would be happy to continue this sometime in the future.
There is one pointer I had written which I feel could pretty much become a podcast in itself. It is on reactivity and response. So maybe that could be like a sequel to this particular episode if you were happy to, because one of the traits is it's always looking for reactions.
Sure, we can look at that, of course. Yes.
And this in itself, yeah, would probably take 20 minutes to cover.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you, Gautam, as always, for your time.
Most welcome. Nick.
And yeah, we look forward to the next episode.
Yes, absolutely. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.